Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great Divorce Podcast. Well, we've got something special for you today. Not just one guest, but three. We have with us three members of the Collaborative Law Institute of Minnesota. Family law attorney Janna Hefty, certified divorce financial analyst Michelle Leisen, and marriage and family therapist Brian Burns. We're going to discuss, among other things, the practice of collaborative law as an alternative to the costly and stressful litigated divorce process, and a lot of other things too. But first, I'd like to welcome everybody. Welcome, everybody. And
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Michelle, you're there. I know you're there.
I
Yeah.
am there. Yeah, I'm
T-
here.
Terrific. Perhaps each of you could introduce yourselves, maybe with a brief introduction and tell us about your practices, and then we'll get into the discussion. Maybe Jana, you could start us off.
Sure. As you mentioned, I am a family law attorney here in Minnesota, focusing my practice on collaborative practice, as I believe it is a better way to address divorce. And I'm the busy mother of two children, and that pretty much is all I have time for. So,
I hear you. Michelle?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Michelle Leisen. I actually born and raised in Minnesota and attended law school here in Minnesota, not a practicing attorney. Started my own financial planning practice, 11 wealth advisory firm 11 years ago. Been in the financial services industry for 28 years. After going through my own divorce, saw kind of what not to do, and then started something called Divorce Smart, which where I help individuals and couples divorce better, and got involved in the Collaborative Law Institute in Minnesota, and it's been great. So my role there is as a financial neutral.
Terrific. And I can relate to going through the divorce and bringing me into the fold as well. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I am a marriage and family therapist. I work in Woodbury, Minnesota. I help couples in conflict. I help couples in high conflict to solve that conflict, whether it's in the form of marriage counseling and marriage repair, or to move into a divorce process like the collaborative one that is the goal is to resolve the conflict and set them up for a better future separately. And often they share kids, so a lot of my work has to do with giving parenting coaching and communication coaching, and general life in divorce advice.
Thanks very much, Brian. I've got a lot of respect for professionals who voluntarily enter the realm of high conflict divorce. I can't say that I have quite that level of courage. I'm involved in high conflict divorce, but usually as the advocate for one side, and I'm not the one getting in the middle of it. That takes a special set of skills.
Thank you. It does feel like it takes courage sometimes. But I think that the clients that we're working with are about 1,000 times more afraid than I am.
Hmm.
And at least that's what I tell myself. And I think it's often the case. I mean, I would be if the roles were reversed. So I think that people just really want to feel like if things are going to be okay. And often they act not, their behavior and choices can be counterintuitive, but it's often out of fear and desperation rather than.
Well, fear, desperation, all those emotions. We'll get into that in the course of the
Mm.
the conversation, and that's one of the things I like about processes like collaborative is that you have professionals representing various areas that really should be represented in the divorce process. But I want to step back for just a second and let our listenership and or viewership know how we came to be speaking today. Jan, as one of your colleagues reached out to me and let me know that from March 1st to March 8th, it happening is something known as Divorce with Respect Week. Now, I'm embarrassed to admit I was not aware of Divorce with Respect Week, but it piqued my interest, and I made sure that I was able to alter my production schedule so that we could get you on in before Divorce with Respect Week. But please, somebody, let me know what is going on here. What's Divorce with Respect Week? How long has it been around? What's going on?
Thank you, Andrew. Divorce with Respect Week was actually created, I believe, by our cohorts out in California. And they were the first ones to do it a handful of years ago. And since then, it's grown to a nationwide movement where we're coming together as collaborative professionals just to raise awareness of this alternative divorce process. And through this week, those of us who have committed to be a part of this will provide free 30-minute consultations during this week or a scheduled time if you book with us that week. So it's that's
That,
pretty much
yeah, no,
the gist of it.
that's terrific. So that's three free 30-minute consultations. And does that include you, Michelle, and you, Brian, as well, all professionals in the
Yeah.
collaborative group?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you guys are in Minnesota. So I know there are collaborative groups around the country. California, I think, has a very big collaborative practice. Minnesota, I was unaware that Minnesota is actually the home of collaborative divorce. It was founded there. Is that correct?
Yes, the founder of Collaborative Practice, officially, I guess, is Stu Webb, and he is a Minnesotan. Back in the 90s, he got tired of family fighting, basically, and said, I think there's a better way. Let's do this better. He got a few other attorneys on board, and they agreed that they would do this out of court. The Minnesota Supreme Court actually granted them basically authority to do so. It's considered a limited scope representation because there's an agreement that they all sign at the beginning, a participation agreement that says if you leave this process, we will no longer represent you legally and you'll have to go find other counsel. So it keeps everybody focused on the goals that are created for that family in this process without that, oh, the court will decide kind of
Right. So this
backbone.
is a key distinction of collaborative law. And
Correct.
I've discussed this a little bit on previous podcasts, is that essentially the attorneys recuse themselves if the case goes to court, which makes it kind of put some pressure, some good pressure on the parties to get it resolved. Now, just want to go back a little bit. Your group is in Minnesota. Michelle, Brian, do you, I'm guessing, Janna, you're licensed in Minnesota, so you can only practice divorce in Minnesota?
I'm actually dual licensed in Illinois as well, but
Ah, okay.
Minnesota is where I practice.
Okay, so dual license, Minnesota, Illinois. Michelle, Brian, you
Yeah.
focus on the Minnesota area also?
Yes. We're really, if I'm not sure where your question's going, but
I'll
I
figure
mean,
it out.
yeah, the power of collaborative divorce is in the ways that the professional team works together. Two collaboratively trained attorneys, neutrals that are working together to provide a structure, because it's really hard to get a divorce together and agree, and to not have the court to rely on is, like you said, good pressure. So we form practice groups, and the three of us are in the Minnesota practice group, so we know each other and work together. There's practice groups in, I'm not sure if there's probably practice groups in every state. I can't, for sure verify that. There's multiple in California, like you said.
Right.
So wherever your listeners are located, Google collaborative law or collaborative divorce rather, and hopefully we'll find the practice group that is present and active in their state. I'm not sure, is there one in Las Vegas?
We have Northern Nevada, like you said, regional. We have the Northern
Yeah,
Nevada group and the Southern Nevada group. And I think
very cool.
I'm pretty sure that the Northern Nevada group, the process has gained more traction than it has in Southern Nevada, which tends to be very litigious.
Okay.
So the group out of Reno in Northern Nevada tends to be
Yeah.
more active. So there are groups around the country. Michelle, for your part, focus on Minnesota. Do you work outside of the state?
Yep, good question. So, as it pertains to divorce, the financial work I do in the divorce realm is limited to Minnesota. Obviously, as a wealth advisor, I'm licensed in other states, but that's on a separate note.
All right. So we briefly touched a little bit on the distinctions of collaborative divorce, but perhaps you could give me a little bit idea of a give our listeners a little bit of an idea about how it actually works compared to, say, a litigious process, which everybody knows or everybody hears about, which is lawyering up. The first thing people do, and unfortunately this happened to me when I went through my divorce, and many people who are uneducated about alternative divorce processes, they hear, "Oh, I got to find a lawyer." Um, I personally don't think it's the best idea to find a lawyer first. I think you need to find your process first and understand what you can do. But to do that, you really need to be educated about the processes. So in collaborative, I'm guessing there are two attorneys, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Are there two financial advisors? Are you in a sole neutral, or are there two financial professionals? How does that work, Michelle?
Yes, there's usually one financial neutral, which I think is beneficial because rather than the normal litigative process where each of your attorneys is asking for all of your information, right, regarding bank statements, tax returns, budgets, and instead of duplicating those efforts and having to submit that information twice, as a financial neutral, they give the information just to me and then I distribute to the group.
Okay, terrific. So you're the story the center of the financials. You gather them from the parties and you distribute them, and it's open. I'm assuming that everybody sees everything.
Exactly. Yes. And it saves the client money, I think, in the long run because you're not duplicating your efforts. You have one person that is collecting all of the information and making sure everything is complete and then distributing it to everyone. So we're all on the same playing field. There's no, oh, I forgot to submit this to my attorney, but I did to the other person's attorney. You don't have to go back and forth with that.
Yeah, I want to get into that into the financial the costs in just a second. But Brian, tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah.
Now, would I'm guessing that you would work with an individual party. There might be two emotional professionals here.
Yeah, so that's there's different models of collaborative practice. And in Minnesota, I typically serve as a neutral. And if the parties have children, I help them develop and mediate a parenting plan that's specific to them, and and act as a coach, really, an emotional coach, a communication coach to each client, each parent to help them be successful as they, go through the process. So while Michelle is doing her financial process, Michelle and the attorneys, I'm doing a parallel process with the parenting plan and the, again, emotional communication coaching. And it's tailored to the needs of the family. I mean, some people need less support, some people ask for more, and I'm able to be flexible depending on the need.
Now, you say there's various models. I mean, I could imagine a scenario
Yeah.
where a spouse may not want to open up to you because you're working with the other spouse as well.
Yeah.
Does that happen?
Probably, well, certainly. As a marriage therapist, I'm really comfortable in that neutral role and asking people to trust me. However, you're right that there are other models where two mental health professionals or two coaches, each working with one client alone, and but yet they're both part of the collaborative team. So they're advocating or helping their client, but also keeping in mind, the good of the system and the team, and that everyone needs to get to the finish line together.
Okay. So for a couple to engage in this process, it would seem to me that either A, they need to be aware of the collaborative process,
Mhm.
or they would likely contact one of you and you would encourage them to engage in the collaborative process. Is that typically how you find people, signing on to the collaborative process?
Yeah, I think I mean, my experience, I don't know what you guys think, but it's the word of mouth, like people who talk to their friends or family who have gone through the collaborative process and been successful, hear about it, and then they seek it out either online or by talking to an attorney or a therapist. And so I regularly have people reaching out, just wanting to learn more about it, at which point I would, do a consultation and some education. And then if they wanted to proceed, give them some names of professionals to reach out to.
To
Michelle,
add to
Jana?
Yeah, to add to that, I would say in the collaborative process, sometimes they start with myself as the financial, sometimes they start with Brian, sometimes they start with Jana. I think it just depends. And in all consultations I do, whether it's collaborative or not, I'm explaining the different ways that couples can divorce and let them make the decision. So it's all about education and educating them the different ways to
Yeah.
do it so that they know. But I would say they come across multiple ways.
Yeah, I think the key word there is education. And, fortunately, as a result of this podcast, I do have people reaching out to me from around the country before they've hired an attorney. And once I've spoken to them, or in the process of speaking to them, I can educate them about the various alternatives available to them to the litigious system. Many times they'll say, we don't want to hire attorneys, we don't want to fight this out. And I think my first order of business is saying, well, this is a legal process and you want to get it right. You don't want to do it yourself, particularly if there's assets and children involved. In great divorce, typically not minor children. So while there's a danger of do it yourself, the attorneys should be involved, but that doesn't mean that you need to hire shark attorneys who are going to bill you $5,000 to $10,000 a month for the next year. There are other processes, and which is why I got collaboratively trained, about 7 years ago. But there's also mediation. There's increasingly more processes coming up that are alternatives to the litigious system, and I think that's great because you've got people who could choose mediation. They could choose a process. I'm part of, as I mentioned before, the Amicable Divorce Network, and we've discussed that on the podcast before, which has variations to collaborative. You've got collaborative. I had a conversation with recently an attorney in North Carolina who started a process of mediation arbitration called Soul Agree. And I think it's great that all these different arrows are out there in the divorce quiver that we can choose from, depending on a particular case. And I'm wondering, each of you, where would you see collaborative fitting in where maybe mediation or some of these other processes doesn't?
Mhm.
I'll
Anybody?
take that one. I see that quite often. So when a couple comes to me for a consultation, I feel like I help explain, there are different types of attorneys, right? So it's important to know the kind of attorney that you're considering hiring as well. To your point, Andrew, around, are you hiring an attorney who their goal is to fight it out as much as they possibly can, or are you hiring an attorney that's like-minded and that wants to have solutions? I would say the differentiating factor as far as which option to go with is the level of support that they need and want, right? Because a lot of times the appeal of mediation is great because, it's simpler, it's less expensive, but they have a lot of questions. They want to know, what do I do for this? What do I do for spousal maintenance? What do I do for child support? What don't I know that I don't know, right? that I should know. And I think when it comes to the level of support that a couple needs, I think is a good indicator that collaborative might be the solution for them.
Right. So, for instance, we're dealing with three professionals here, and I'm a big proponent of a team approach to divorce, whether it's in a formal process called collaborative law, or it's it's put together in pieces or through mediation or a la carte. But obviously, divorce is a legal process. But Michelle, we know it's about money in many times, in many cases, and it's often the largest the largest financial transaction of our lives. And as Brian would attest, we're making the largest financial transaction of our lives during a time of emotional stress and where perhaps our reasoning faculties aren't working to their optimal capabilities. So whether it's but collaborative necessarily includes the three component parts, right? As part of the formal process.
Yeah, the team, like you said, is a little different depending on the case or the situation. Not all collaborative cases include all professionals. As you mentioned, gray divorce, a lot of times there's not minor children.
Right.
However, that doesn't mean necessarily that we don't need the family specialist or support, because even adult children are very affected by their parents separating and divorcing. So that is always a part of the conversation at the beginning. As Michelle mentioned, it's important to know the type of attorney that you're speaking with. And most of the states that do have collaborative practice in place do have a organized group of some form that you can see who is part of that collaborative network and know, because attorneys will sometimes say, yeah, I work collaboratively. Well, there's a difference between working collaboratively in the litigative system and being a collaborative attorney. So,
It's an important distinction because collaborative law is capital C, capital L. It's a formal process that requires training. Whereas you could say, well, I'm collaborative. Well, that doesn't mean anything unless you're committed to the formal process, right?
correct.
But let me play devil's advocate here. I have heard through the grapevine that in some collaborative groups, there may be some attorneys who are not really collaborative. Brian
That's
laughed.
that's false.
That's an acknowledgement.
Who's saying that?
But it happens, and I'm not saying
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
Uh-huh.
maybe a litigious attorney says, "Hey, I want a piece of this collaborative action.
Yeah.
Let me join this group." Brian, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, there's always like there's I was gonna say bad apples that but I even think that attorneys that join a collaborative law group aren't bad apples. That, they just don't know what they don't know. Um, uh, but what I tell clients who are considering the process is, and I'll get to this, is that um having the structure of a team, even though it costs more to have more professionals, even though there is efficiencies there, it's still more money. And I tell them that the divorce, the price of the divorce, the overall price tag is directly related to the complexity and the conflict, and the communication. So the three C's. We can't control the complexity or the conflict, like that's on the client side of things, but we can control the communication on the professional side. And so each client having an attorney that is trained and, to your point, practices collaboratively, not just in name, but in their actions. And as a network, we know who we are and who we aren't.
Right.
So you're really relying on, the first collaborative professional that you meet to give you good feedback. And so if that feedback is, get on Google and search and put your team together, well, that's probably not a team member then that you need to move on, because you want specific names and to understand that these are people that work together. who trust each other. That provides the good communication that will help your divorce and help you with your side, which is the complexity and the conflict.
Yeah, ultimately, a dedicated collaborative professional will know the
Yeah,
other dedicated
yeah,
collaborative professionals.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we want to be a big tent and invite, like have as many trained people as possible, but we want quality, over quantity when at the end of the road because it's people's lives
Yeah,
and they want to get what they signed up for.
yeah, exactly. We've mentioned cost a couple of times, and I'm wondering, has the collaborative body, either locally or nationally, actually it's international as well, because I know there are groups
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Canada,
Mhm.
um, done any sort of studies on the cost of collaborative versus litigated divorce?
N Nothing recent, but there was studies in I think 2010, 2012 timeframe. So again, this is like almost 15 years old. The data, but what they found is the average in the U.S. anyways, cost of a team collaborative divorce is in the range of 12 to 25,000, something like that. Uh, my personal experience, that number, it doesn't have a lot of meaning because it's just so individual.
Right.
And I, worked on collaborative divorces that have been much more than that, north of 50 grand total. And I've worked on collaborative divorces that are less than 10. And I never tell people that it's the cheapest process. The cheapest process is to not hire any help.
Right.
But then you're probably going to pay for it down the
Pay
road.
for it in the long term for sure.
Yeah. It's not the most expensive process. That would be court, way far and above anything else. And it's you get more support than mediation though, and you're paying for that support. And I think, I'm biased. I think it's worth it.
No, it's
But
it's
that,
great. It's just it's an alternative. It's an
yeah.
option available to people. And you mentioned like the more expensive case. Well, a $50,000 collaborative case may have cost $200,000 if it was
Oh,
litigated
no
between,
doubt. Yeah, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
the $10,000 case, may have been 20,000 with litigated attorneys. So, um, yeah, it's very specific to the particular case, but it's certainly a preferable option. Um, as long as, throw the disclaimer out there. I mean, in some cases, there are going to be legal issues, issues of abuse, legal malfeasance, fraud, where perhaps you do need to go the litigated route. But
Yeah, absolutely. Like the court's there for a reason, and there's always going to be cases that's appropriate
I
for
want
the
to
court.
ask the three of you. This is the Gray Divorce podcast. I'm curious in your experiences with your collaborative group, are you seeing increased incidences of older people divorcing, or are you noticing anything in particular with the cases that you're seeing as it pertains to any trends in older people getting divorced?
I definitely am seeing an increased number of older people, not only divorce. I do something called discernment counseling,
Right.
which is when a couple is not one or both are not sure if they want to work on the marriage or divorce. It's that, difficult decision point. And many of those clients are in their 50s and 60s, have been married for, they made it past the launching of the kids and the empty nest stage, and now they're at that point. And then the second part of your question, is there anything I'm noticing? I'm noticing that the parenting stress on gray divorce is it's not as much as like the day-to-day stress of having kids going back and forth between homes, but the stress of kids in the middle, mixed messaging, family gatherings, managing college costs or supporting your kids as a team. The parents, there's no parenting plans or required anyways, but there's quite a bit of complexity that I've seen in gray divorce when it on the parenting front.
Oh, that's I couldn't agree more. You know, adult children of gray divorce is probably is a very sadly neglected area
Yeah.
because, and I know this from personal experience, you go into the attorney's office and you tell them you're getting divorced. One of the first questions is, do you have any minor children? And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, next. And
Right,
then
right.
you're not considered, but they can play a very important role in the divorce process and the parties' lives from a psychological, emotional, and estate planning basis as well.
Yeah, you know something cool, Andrew, is that as a traditional part of my role, I interview children to understand their perspective and their experience as the family goes through divorce. It's a child-friendly, very, very intentionally safe for the child experience. We're not asking kids where they want to live or which parent they like better. But I've started it just in the past year and a half to interview adult children in divorce, and those are some very rich conversations to give them a voice um, that can come from a neutral place to their parents, and also to help them navigate, give them some feedback as they try to figure out how to shift and to adjust to the new normal.
No,
So
that's
it's not
terrific.
therapy for them, but it's an interview or an interaction that gives them a voice and a experience that's helpful, I think.
No, that's terrific. That's terrific. Hey, Michelle, the financials of gray divorce. What are you seeing
Mhm.
out there in the collaborative cases and in any cases you may deal with that may not be inside the group? Any thoughts?
Yes, Andrew. I would say there's definitely, in my practice, an increase in gray divorce. And I haven't quite pinpointed exactly what the cause of that is or why that is. Maybe it's coming out of COVID and realizing life is too short and not wanting to be complacent and settle anymore. Um, Aging populations, people living longer. I'm not quite sure, but I definitely have seen that an uptick in that for sure.
Yeah, no, we've dedicated a couple episodes to the multitudinous reasons for this, and I think I'm up to about nine. But there's a lot of things. But I think one of the interesting things is that the plus 65 group is actually experiencing the highest growth rate, and these are the boomers. And so the boomers are moving into adulthood. They have more relaxed ideas about more progressive ideas, I guess, about divorce, and they're not shy about it. And they're thinking, if I'm going to live another 20 years here, now's the time to, what was that character from Shawshank Redemption? Get busy
Get
living,
busy
or
living. Hmm.
and I think that's a big impetus. Janna, anything to add here?
No, I would say the biggest is division of discussion here is very similar to collaborative cases, right? In the traditional legal process, it's an attorney, and we're trying to handle all this stuff that we're not necessarily experts at. In the end, like you said, it's a legal process, but this interdisciplinary collaborative approach really allows financial neutrals to do what they're good at, mental health professionals to do what they're good at, and to come together in the end for the family to move on to the next phase, next chapter.
Yeah. And as Brian was saying a minute ago, in the long run, is actually less costly to have to have the professionals of their particular disciplines and not have, a therapist speaking on legal issues, a financial speaking on emotional issues, an attorney speaking on financial issues, which can happen, when it's isolated. So I think the thrust on the team approach is great. Do any of you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I guess just kind of commenting on what you just mentioned there. I know different states have different legal approaches. However, to point out in Minnesota, one of the things that a family case will do if you go hire an attorney is they will order you, unless it's an exception, to go to mediation or an ADR process of some sort. If that's the case, you're not only paying for that neutral, right? A financial neutral or a social neutral. Here in Minnesota, we have multiple processes, but you're also paying for your attorney to sit there with you. So you're paying for the neutral and the attorney. As Michelle mentioned earlier, and Brian, in the collaborative process here, Michelle is the neutral. Both parties go to her, and you don't pay for the attorney to sit there while you give her your financials. So that's an efficiency in the collaborative process that
Right.
a lot of people don't understand without the education behind it.
The education so important. So I would encourage our listeners to look in your particular state for collaborative groups. Is there a master website that directs people for their state, or should they go to just type in on Google collaborative law, Illinois?
There's the IACP, International Academy of Collaborative Professionals. That would be the most comprehensive list. Not every state practitioner is a member of that, so it's not a foolproof, but it's probably the best one spot to go to. Otherwise, yeah, you're searching in your own community.
You mentioned before we wrap up, Divorce with Respect Week. The opportunity for people to have a free 30-minute consultation with divorce professionals such as yourselves. Perhaps you could let our listeners, those of you who are available to work nationally, all of you, if you could give your contact information. But of course, Janna, we know you're Illinois and Minnesota. So if someone's interested in finding out more about your services, Janna, how would they find you?
I actually, for Divorce with Respect Week, would have them Google Divorce with Respect Week or go to collaborativedivorcecalifornia.com. That actually is the home base for Divorce with Respect Week. And you
Okay.
can see all the states and the professionals who have agreed to give these free 30-minute consultations on that site. So that's the home base for Divorce with Respect Week, state by state, professional by professional, with all of our contact information.
Terrific, and I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. Brian, how would our listeners get a hold of you?
Well, I'm happy to receive emails and happy to respond to most of them. Brian at mnrelationshiprepair.com. And my website is www.mnrelationshiprepair.com. I'm licensed in Minnesota and Wisconsin, so happy to do a free consult to anybody. But if you're going to pay me, you'll have to live in one of those two states.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Michelle, how about you?
Yes, so interested people could go to my website, which is mydivorcesmart.com, and you can sign up for a consultation. And if I'm unable to help, I have plenty of resources who can.
Awesome. Thanks very much, everybody. This was great, and we'll be sure to put it up on the in the show notes. Divorce with Respect Week. Great talking to all of you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Great Divorce Podcast. To learn more or get in contact with your host, you can visit Andrew's website at transcendretirement.net. Also, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Information provided is educational only and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Each situation is unique and should be discussed with your tax or legal advisor prior to implementation. Andrew Hatherley is not an attorney and does not provide legal advice. Information provided is financial in nature. Advisory services offered through Hatherley Capital Management, LLC. Divorce financial analysis services offered through Wiser Divorce Solutions, an affiliated company.